June the 2nd, 2 a.m. 2015. It's full moon, and this is in super fine high definition 1920 by 1080p. I'm going to try and I'm using a powerful lens. I'm on a tripod, so I'm just going to put it over here because it's going to travel toward the right. Okay, let's see. I'm interested in watching the movement in the black areas because the entire moon is made out of orbs. So I'm going to prove that. That the whole thing is in motion, and all the orbs are moving super fast. There is no solid surface. It's not only the dark parts that are orbs, but the whole thing. So there couldn't have been any kind of a spacecraft landing on the moon. No people walking on the moon. There could have been nothing like that ever, and there never can be. That was all made up. If you let me just set this up higher. If I can make it stay here. Okay, you can see that the whole thing is in motion. I can get closer, but then you can't really tell. See, the closer I get, the harder it is to see because there are zillions of orbs making up that moon cluster. By the way, the moon does not have a glow because of any sun reflection. The moon glows because of these glowing clusters that give it the brightness and the glow and the light that we see. So there's a lot of them. They don't all operate all at once. They light up as needed in order to give us the impression that this is a solid object, where in fact it's a living entity, the whole thing. It's a living organism, because orbs are cluster organisms, and being that this whole thing is a cluster, you can see the orbs alive and well and moving all over. So there was no Apollo landing, there was no moonwalk, and there was no golf playing on the moon, and there never could be. Okay, these things are alive. There is no solid surface there. When there's a half moon, that's what it is. Half the cluster goes off into space, and half is left. When it's a quarter moon, 3/4 of the cluster are gone into space, and only 1/4 is left, and giving us the impression that it's a quarter moon. But it has nothing to do with the sun whatsoever. It's just the amount of orbs that glow or don't glow. And these are not just orbs, they're orb clusters, because each orb is an orb cluster. And you can see that these glowing orb clusters give the moon its brightness. Look how bright they can be. They can be even much brighter. They change in brightness value, and they change also in their position, because some clusters go out, others go on, turn on I mean, and therefore the whole thing changes, and that's why we see different scenery. The scenery itself is constructed by orbs, and it's just orb clusters piling up into different shapes to give us the impression that it's solid ground, but in fact the whole thing is alive. The whole thing is very much alive. When they're together like this in a moon cluster, or if it's a star, they all act as one entity. Then they become part of one whole, and the whole acts as one. All of these orbs act as one entity. Okay, but they can split up and act individually. It's not hard for them to be individual orbs, because every orb can act on its own. Now these orbs may look small, but they're more than 100 kilometers in diameter each. Okay, and look how many of them there are. Don't forget, when it's full moon, it's spherical. Just think of how many can fill a 4,000 mile in diameter sphere. Closing that back off. Excuse me. Okay, you see, even those orb clusters that aren't as bright as some of them, they also are glowing and giving the moon its light. And as I said, they alternate. They don't all glow at the same time. It's not every night the same clusters are glowing. They change. Okay, so that every orb cluster that consists, that makes up the entire orb cluster that's the moon itself, or the moon hologram itself, all those big orb clusters, they all take turns and glow. You see the size of those orbs? Okay, some of them are 1,000 kilometers in size. So there's no solid ground. There was never a moon landing. And there couldn't have possibly been a moonwalk. Anything that lands in this thing would be burnt up immediately or crushed to death by all these organisms, because they're very keen predators and capable of squashing anything as small as a man or a capsule. They have lots of serious appendages, and all kinds of capabilities that we don't even know exactly all the capabilities that they do have. But they have they are highly intelligent organisms or entities, and they are in the zillions just in that moon cluster. And since this is a cluster and a cluster nucleus, just like a star, the moon also has a supporting cluster which is larger than the moon, and it stretches way out into space next to the moon. Okay, I'm just going to try and bring this closer to see if I can catch some orbs leaving the moon. Okay, it's too bright tonight to see, but there's the space behind the moon, or on the side of the moon, and behind it, and that's what's in space. I gotta get the right light angle. Excuse me. There. So when you ask yourself, are we alone in the universe? Man, not at all. Okay. The situation is the same on Earth, except the orbs on Earth are very small, unless you go up high in the air, in the upper atmosphere. But you know, you have to be in the jet stream to see the larger orbs. Sometimes they come down lower, not that often, but they breed on Earth. And there's a lot of little ones in the air, on Earth, in the water, all over, in trees, on the ground, everywhere, on everything and everyone. But these ones up in space, they're hundreds of miles in diameter, and there's a whole lot of them. You see? Okay, so that's the dark energy and the dark matter. Okay, you can see it moving around. Space is full of it. This is actually what holds space together, because space is not a void. It's like an endless living ocean of life, and these orbs and their activity are the dark matter and the dark energy, the energy coming from all their activity. Excuse me. So they never stop moving. They can move at phenomenal rates. They are energy, but they can be also matter. And when they are energy, they can be pure energy, which is light. And when they're in that state, they can move faster than light, because that's their starting point, is light. And when they start moving, they move faster than light. So these are the only organisms I know that can exceed the speed of light. And here they are. Okay, I shot a video today. Oops, I get that part. I showed a video today of almost exactly the same thing here on Earth, except on a much smaller scale. I'm trying to get just at the edge of the moon so that you could see all the orbs that are in the cluster around it. So these are the orbs that make up the moon orb cluster, which is not a solid object at all. It's never been a solid object. And there was never anyone landing or walking on it. And especially no one played golf on it. That's a sure fact. So I'm going to go back to the moon, back off. Notice they increase the brightness because they know I'm filming them, but there's no escape. You can still see them. Okay, the reason they increase their brightness is they're trying to blind me and the camera from detecting them, but you can see that they're there, and I know that they're there even with my eyes closed. So you can see that the entire thing is just alive. So that's a big lie they told us about Apollo and all the other missions. Shame on them. No wonder they're saying that moonwalk tapes are missing. I wouldn't show them either to anyone, because people might find out they were made in some studio by Stanley Kubrick, and this is not a what do you call it, one of those crazy theories where I'm speculating. It's a fact. Okay, you can see that it's a fact. You see the intensity of light that the moon is putting out? Watch how many clusters have lit up just to hide the fact that this whole side that was dark before, okay, look, the brightness has increased at least 10 to 20 times just to hide the fact that there are orbs and that this is a living entity. And you can tell that they're intelligent, because if they weren't intelligent, they would not increase the light. And for them to know 250,000 miles away that here I am, one person with a camera filming them, it's unbelievable. But the way they know that is because there are orbs down on Earth, and they have excellent communication skills. Look how bright the moon got it. The whole thing lit up. Okay? The whole thing. Okay, there's only a few places left where it's not lit. And that's just to hide the fact that the whole thing is orbs, and the whole thing is a cluster, an orb cluster, surrounded by an even larger orb supporting cluster, and that the whole thing is alive. and in constant motion. Look now, the whole thing is lit up. There are no more dark spots, and that shows extreme intelligence. This is the only part left. Okay, so I'm not going too close because I want you to see them moving, because I can get much closer right into them. I've shown that before, a few years ago. Okay. So you can't light up the entire moon because it takes too much energy. There's always going to be a part that's going to be not lit up. But as you notice, every place I film, they know exactly where I'm filming. You see them light up? Watch, that whole thing will be lit up. And that's a high degree of intelligence, because they know exactly what part I'm filming. You see it lighting up, slowly but surely. It takes them a while to get the clusters moving and create the light. Now you see, it was very dark before. It's getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. But they don't know where I'm going to go with my camera. See, I can just change, look for another spot. There's going to have to be somewhere where they haven't lit it up. Right here. Okay. So, like I said, this is the best video game in the world because you're playing with very smart opponents. Zillions of them. Zillions against one. So you have to really pay attention. You have to have good focus, excellent concentration, and you have to be ready to think fast and have an open mind and have good imagination, and try and figure out what they're doing and then guess their next move. Okay, you see how that got lighter? Now that's gonna glow. So basically speaking, look at the size of those orbs. Okay, they're 500 kilometers, those two white ones. 500 kilometers each, I think. And look at these. Look. It's all the moon glowing. Look at this one, how bright it is. There's absolutely no sun reflection, and the moon does not affect our tides. Our tides are affected by the Earth's own magnetic field, not the moon. Okay, all these are fibs and lies. So, okay, that's what's lighting up the moon cluster. And it is a living entity, an orb cluster, and the moon being the orb cluster nucleus, just like a star is. Okay, and these are all the orbs that support it, and that's what space is all made out of. And these orbs create the dark energy, and the dark matter. Their activity like that makes the dark energy, and they themselves are the dark matter. And we call them that because we can't see them. Well, we weren't able to see them. Now we can. Thank you for viewing. I hope you watch this video carefully and listen to everything I have said about the moon. Thank you.